Hey friends, today I wanted to talk a little bit about emotions. It's very common for folks to judge their emotions. And by judge them, I mean evaluate whether some emotions are good or some emotions are bad. I'm sure you've heard people talk about positive emotions or negative emotions. Oh, that's a bad emotion. Anger is a bad emotion. Sadness is a bad emotion. And I think that kind of judgment is not helpful. So I'm going to invite you, if you're open to it, to think about the emotions that you experience in a new way. We may have been taught growing up that certain emotions are good and certain emotions are bad, and you shouldn't feel certain emotions if you're a certain kind of person. There is an overlay with identity, especially culturally in America or wherever you are. There's often, we gender emotions, we put certain identities on certain emotions. So like anger is an appropriate male emotion, somebody might say. Women shouldn't voice anger, whatever it may be. However you identify, there's baggage, there's rules that we put on certain feelings. I'm here to say, stop it. I'm here to say that's not helpful. I'm here to reinforce for you, emotions are human. If you are a human being, you are entitled to the entire scope of emotions that you could possibly experience. And it's okay to feel any of the emotions on that continuum that you may experience. Even if they're uncomfortable, even if someone in your house growing up told you that you shouldn't express certain emotions, that emotion was bad or wrong or not appropriate for you, what may have been going on is they were uncomfortable with how to handle your feeling. They may have not known how to support you in the feeling that you were having if it was strong. Or maybe the behavior that you chose in response to the emotion that you were feeling maybe made them uncomfortable, or maybe broke some rules, or wasn't appropriate for the social situation that it was in. I want to separate out a few different things. There's the emotion that we experience. Then there's what we do with that emotion, the action or the response that we choose with that emotion. And then there's other people's stuff. There's other people's reactions to that, their baggage, their lessons, their parenting, their socializing, whatever it may be. There's all these rules. Again, if you watch some of my other videos, we talk about rules, right? They start to become our truth, right? So if you were taught growing up that for you, anger wasn't an appropriate emotion. You were not supposed to feel anger in this house, young lady or young man, whatever it may be. Guess what? All of a sudden, we jump ahead 20 years, 30 years, and you are an adult who feels bad feeling anger. You still, to this day, may feel like you're not allowed to experience anger. It's wrong. You're doing something wrong by feeling that feeling. My friends, I'm here to tell you that's not true. I'm here to tell you that was a product of the upbringing you had. The rules that the people who were running that house, that was a product of their beliefs that they instilled in you about feelings that are perfectly healthy and normal for you. Societally, there's all kinds of that stuff still bouncing around, right? Culturally, we are still taught that certain emotions are good and certain emotions are bad. I'm ashamed I have this feeling. I feel guilty that I feel this way. I don't know what to do if I feel this feeling, I'm worried it'll get out of control. These are very common reasons why people steer away from mindfulness. Check out my mindfulness video. Or they steer away from allowing themselves the space to fully experience something that they are naturally, completely within their rights as a human being to experience. It may be uncomfortable, it may be unfamiliar, it may be scary. The emotions themselves are not unhealthy. As a human being, you're allowed to feel whatever you need to feel. What you choose to do with that feeling is up to you, and you can opt for certain responses based on that. I invite you to check out my video that talks about the thought, feeling, action cycle that we go through, because the feeling is an important component of that whole cycle that we're in. A thought comes up for us, which is based on some stimulus that we got, right? Something triggered us, something catalyzed that thought. That thought produced the feeling in us, an emotion that's often coupled with a physical response, right? Our body physically responds a certain way to that. And then we respond to that. Then we react to that and we choose an action or a response. So a lot of people will also try to control their emotions. Oh, I've just got to not feel this feeling, or I've got to put it away, or I've got to hide it in a little box with a big lock and key, or whatever it may be. I'm also here to say we can't really control our emotions. By definition, they are irrational. They are beyond our control. We can't force them into spaces. They are what our system is naturally needing to process as a result of thoughts or stimulus or things that are happening to us. So the second thing that I want to invite you to consider is not only are emotions healthy, and there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion, but two, you can't control your emotions. They don't work that way. How many times have you felt like, oh, I'm not gonna feel this feeling, and then guess what? Days, weeks, moments later, it comes busting on out, right? It explodes in some kind of catharsis, whether it's crying or yelling or anger or some other behavior around that. We can think of our emotions as like they're bubbling. It's like bubbling on a stove, right? It's a pot on a stove and it's bubbling. It's a pressure cooker. If we keep the lid on that pressure cooker and we lock it up tight, but we keep the heat going, eventually that steam is going to get out one way or another, right? The pot may end up exploding. So what we do by allowing ourselves space to actually feel the emotion and not judge it and step back from the judgment is we open up the steam valve on that pressure cooker. A lot of my colleagues talk about this idea. I love that image. I love that analogy, right? We're opening up the valve on the pressure cooker so that the steam can escape a little bit and it doesn't feel so tense. I sometimes call it a controlled detonation. If you are feeling strong feelings that maybe are difficult for you to navigate, whether it's grief, sadness, anger, loss, guilt, shame, anxiety, some of those feelings that might feel a little more difficult to navigate, doesn't mean they're bad, just maybe more challenging for us to navigate. I like creating what I call a controlled detonation. So I'll go for a walk or I'll sit quietly and I will turn on a song that may intentionally trigger a catharsis, a physicalization of that emotion. Crying, yelling, whatever it may be. Giving yourself healthy space to process that emotion is a very healthy way of navigating feelings that may be difficult for you. Again, it doesn't mean they're bad, though. It doesn't mean they're bad. There's no such thing as a good emotion or a bad emotion. So here's what I want you to consider. What would be different for you if you didn't judge your emotions as good or bad, even positive or negative? If they were just emotions, if they just were, if they were just what your system needed to experience in that moment, what would be different for you? Think about it. I don't know. How different would that be from the way you're typically engaging with your emotions or navigating those spaces for yourself right now? Would it be really different? Does it seem like you can't even consider it? So I invite you to approach this with some curiosity. What judgments do you have about your emotions, about certain kinds of emotions? Is happy the only good emotion? Is joy, is love a good emotion? Is anger a bad emotion, right? Do you have these beliefs about emotions? Get curious about where you learned those judgments from, those rules about emotions from. What did your parents teach you about emotions? What did your parents teach you about your behavior relating to certain emotions when you were a child, when you didn't even know how to process some emotions, so you did what a child did and you were just a child? What lessons have you learned from your experiences as a child, as a kid, as a teenager, growing up, that you still hold on to about your relationship with feelings? When we do that, that keeps us in a growth mindset and it allows us space to be human and to feel whatever our system needs to feel, without trying to contain it, force it, fight it, hide from it, put it in a box. That's a fight you're never gonna win. That's a struggle you're never gonna come out on top with because you're spending energy fighting energy. Trying to fight our emotions, trying to hide from our emotions, trying to contain our emotions, trying to box our emotions in a certain corner costs us energy. I'm not saying you gotta say every feeling you have at every moment of the day and have a meltdown in the middle of a workplace where it may not be appropriate, but we can still honor the experience that we're having, the feeling that we're having. Then what we do have control over is how we choose to respond to the emotion that we notice we're feeling. Care for the feeling that we're feeling. Check out my control room video if you want to look at a playful way of starting to identify what we're experiencing, and emotions are a piece of that. What does your system tell you that you need when you notice you're feeling a certain emotion? You get to control your response to that, but the emotion itself is not going to be in your control. And we're going to keep talking about that, but I just wanted to introduce this idea. Maybe it's the first time you've heard it, maybe you've heard it a million times. Emotions are not good or bad, they just are. And you can't control them directly. What we can control is how we care for the experience that we're having when we're feeling certain emotions. I want to hear your thoughts about this. Throw a comment down below or drop me a line. Let me know your thoughts on this. What do you struggle with when it comes to certain emotions? What rules do you feel like you're still living by when it comes to your relationship with certain emotions? I want to hear all about it. Let's talk. Let's talk. Thanks for your time today. If you feel inspired, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Feel free to hit like on this video, or like I said, drop a comment below if you want to. No pressure. It's all good. Have a great day. Thanks.